All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. I'll call tonight's meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilperson Adeline Rudolph.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Ms. Cross, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember John Casey,
Present.
Councilmember Terrence Bentley,
Present.
Councilmember Adeline Rudolph,
Here.
Councilmember David Sauter.
Present.
Supervisor Jared Simpson.
Present. Can you also confirm that the meeting was properly advertised?
It was.
Thank you very much. And I would also make note that this is the first meeting of the month, and now that we are going to a 2-meeting per month format, by our rules of procedure, this meeting, the first meeting of the month will follow a slightly different format than the typical town board meeting, as this one will typically have more presentations and other business presentations, discussions, workshops, rather than resolutions, motions, and business and presentations by departments. So you will notice some subtle differences within the meeting tonight. We are going to move Mr. Coyle's presentation to the end of the meeting. He has asked that we kind of shift that towards the back end of the meeting. We will have our sidewalk envisionment map presentation first. Do we have Mr. Robinson? There are a lot of faces on there. So we have Thomas Robinson from Colliers Engineering to present on the sidewalk envisionment map.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. So talking with Sarah, what I'm going to do is kind of give some highlights and talk a little bit about the changes we've made. I'm not sharing a presentation, so I don't have anything up on the screen, although I suppose I could do something here real quick. Hang on a second. Yeah, my screen sharing is disabled. But what I wanted to do, Katie Darcy from our office presented this, I think, at your November meeting. So mostly what I wanted to do tonight is just talk a little bit about the comments we received and the adjustments to the final report that we've made. And that's all that information has gone back to the town already. After the November draft was presented, we received just about a dozen comments, and they've all been addressed in the revised report, either through changes to the map itself or changes to the text in the document. About half the changes were really adjustments to the priority sidewalk segments, whether we were moving them up or down in terms of level of priority. So we had, I think, 5 or 6 comments in that area, and they were all just adjusted as requested. There were a few other notable comments, requests to stress the importance of accessibility for new sidewalk construction. So that was references that we added to the town's site design and development criteria, as well as some call outs in additional places in the report. So everything was picked up on. There was really nothing that was very difficult to handle. And you would see some changes to the priority segments in the mapping itself. Other than that, I think we're probably good to go. And everything's been transmitted back to the town for finalization. So we were working on this report, on this project for just about a year. And we hope it'll be, an adaptable, updatable tool moving forward to improve community connectivity and accessibility throughout the town.
Anybody have any questions? Any board members?
What generated these priority changes? Comments from Where were the
Yeah.
comments from?
Yeah, comments from, we had, let me see, we had 12 comments from 3 different individuals. And we addressed them all, and then we did distribute a spreadsheet identifying the comments, the source, and how we addressed them. Those went back to the town. And we can make sure everybody has access to that.
Are those revisions in our package, or are the comments in our package, Jared?
Yeah,
The only comments I saw that modified the priorities were the ones that Adeline sent out on December 1st. There were subsequent ones that were they sent to us?
no, we had a cutoff date, I think, in January for the comments. So everything we got prior to the comment deadline was addressed, and we sent a spreadsheet back to the town with all the responses.
That was in early January and I forwarded it to all of you.
Say that again?
I forwarded it to all of you in early January and again. Thank you.
I only called the ones from Adeline.
It's also
Yeah.
at the end,
Oh, and it's in your.
it's page 37, I guess it would be for the last attachment.
So for everyone in the public, can you kind of give us just a 30,000 foot view of just the overview of the project? Where, number one, where this came from? Just maybe a quick 2-minute look at where this came from. And then the reason for gathering more information back, the comment taking process, because I think there was some question on that. And then where we would go, what our next steps would be after this.
Sure. So the snapshot of the project was the town of Canandaigua was undertaking a database planning effort to proactively enhance and expand the existing sidewalk network. So the intent of the project was to create the report and the corresponding map to provide maximum levels of accessibility, safety, and community connectivity for pedestrians regardless of age or mobility levels. So connectivity, accessibility, and mobility were really the guiding forces behind the project. The sidewalk envisionment plan identifies target areas of greatest needs and prioritizes the projects for implementation. It was based on public engagement as well as a crowdsourcing application and a number of meetings with town staff and key stakeholders to verify existing conditions and identify priority sidewalk enhancements. So that was really the purpose, and the deliverable to the town was the report and an interactive GIS database map that they can use and update over time to make adjustments and respond to needs and opportunities in the town as well as development trends. Does that help?
Yeah, and so others know, because we've had others come on the board. How many years have you been gathering the public input on this? Because I know it's been a couple.
Well, yeah, and part of this project was to go back through and reevaluate the parallel and previous planning initiatives that the town had undertaken, because the town's been very comprehensive and continuous in their planning efforts regarding these issues. So we had a number of previous studies that we looked at, and each one of those studies had their own public engagement process and set of comments and input. So we rolled all of that together, as well as we had 4 engagement events over the past year regarding to this study particularly, as well as the crowdsourcing application, which brought in about 150 additional data points regarding the needs for sidewalk in the town. So this particular project, the public engagement's been going on for just about 12 months. But we were piggybacking and utilizing public engagement from several years of previous studies in the town as well.
Thanks. That helps give some good context on that.
Mind if I ask a couple?
Yep, sure.
So I think you said you had 78 votes, correct? That was prior to the modifications.
Yeah, that was from the, from the crowdsourcing app, we had 78 votes, total votes.
And a person could vote a few times, one time, or many times, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We didn't limit the number of inputs per individual.
So in theory, we could have a dozen or 24 people responding to your survey and marking this a number of times to come up with the 78 votes.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the modifications you made, I guess, are summarized on a sheet we have in our package here.
Yeah.
And there were 3 from Jeff Ballard, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from Adeline, 1 from Terry.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what we had.
Okay. So we changed the priority on some of these areas where sidewalks may be needed based upon people telling you that some of these should be changed from medium priority to high priority or vice versa.
Yeah, that's correct. So we used the data we collected and we had an algorithm that sort of gave a first round of rankings, recognizing that input from knowledgeable individuals and the town staff would be an important factor. So that was the final round of adjustments, is making these tweaks based on, what essentially some of the local experts were telling us.
Thank you.
Most of my suggestions and comments were things we had discussed in the town board meeting that I wanted to make sure were not forgotten. That's why I forwarded them.
Absolutely. Yep. Appreciate that. So that was really kind of the fine tuning at the end of a fairly extended analysis process to make just some adjustments to the priorities there.
Barry, do you have any comments or questions?
No, the comment that I had made that was included here was accommodated well. And that was that, in addition to this, the planning board does have the authority and responsibility to look at sidewalk connections, and if it's something that's outside this, they can still proceed with that action. So,
Chair, can you clarify for me, like, I'm not gonna spend your time and money looking at this entire plan. That's now in the plan, is that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Dave, do you have any comments? No, I'm good. Okay. All right. So Thomas, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in and reporting on that. We
Absolutely. Thank
appreciate
you.
it. We will have a continued public hearing on that right now. So if you want to listen in on that, you're more than welcome to. And
I'll
hear what
stick around.
questions the public might have.
Okay, sure thing.
All right, so at this time, we're moving to continued public hearings. I will reopen the public hearing. God, this is a while ago, the public hearing that was closed, and this is regarding resolution 2023-279 regarding the sidewalk and vision and map. And at this time, I am reopening the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to be heard at this time? Mr. Mayor.
To step up, I have a question.
And
First of all,
Could you state your name
Yes, I will.
and your address
James
and your
Davis,
occupation?
2322 County Road 28. I'm speaking to the audience, please. County Road 28, Canandaigua. This is the north section of the town. I'm retired from law enforcement. whether you know where we are or not, if you know where Eric's office is, go north of there, North Road, Emerson Road, this road, back to the main road in the Madison, okay? I only have a couple of questions, and it has to do with proposed sewer district in our area. Okay, and it has to do with art money. My question
So-
to the board,
Jim,
the question to the
just
board.
1 second. The public hearing right now is for the sidewalks.
Well, can I ask this and I'll be out of here? Can I have
The board's pleasure. Will the board, does
I'll
is
be
the board
honest.
okay with Mr. Mayor? I'm okay with-
Okay, first of all,
because I respect you
You've done enough work on
and
it.
you've done
so
enough
let me
work.
speak
You're
on
one,
it.
go ahead.
you might not be happy with my question, but when is the next town board meeting so that I could go to the town clerk and say, can I have the floor for X number of minutes?
2 weeks from tonight.
26th.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, to get to the sewer project, I'm not gonna bore you with numbers and all of this stuff, okay? My understanding, this art money we got was 1.1 million, correct?
Just a-
Appropriation towards this capital improvement project was 750,000. Can you answer my question? What happened to the $250,000?
The rest of the money is.
Rest of the
currently-
money, maybe I didn't.
Currently designated towards Ononda Park upland improvements.
Okay, this is Parks and Recreation, correct?
Yep.
Correct. This would be my last question. When you make the town budget up for highway equipment, sidewalks, water district, storm drains, Parks and Recreation, isn't that in your town budget that all of us pay in our taxes? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is Parks and Recreation?
When you put your town budget together, what if it's a water line, a drain line, highway equipment, Parks and Recreation equipment? When you put in your town budget that we all pay as taxpayers, isn't Parks and Recreation in your budget?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So with federal money, this is federal money, folks, for a project that is dearly needed for health in our area, this is a health hazard we have. That $250,000 should be put back in to $1.1 million to lower this project. And that's all I have to say. Soul search. Thank you very much. I'm going home. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You probably can't get it off the window, but I have to have my say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim.
All right.
Jim, you're never boring.
Now I can go home and have some vittles. Thank you very much.
See ya.
See you on the side.
All right, is there anyone who would like to be heard regarding sidewalks? I'm not gonna say or anything else. So do I. Anybody online? Okay. So at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed. All right, on the new public hearings. We have a public hearing to adopt a local law to amend Town Code Chapter 2020 dash 9.1 short-term rentals and seeker intent to declare lead agency. And this pertains to attachment 1, and I would add that there is no action planned. There is no action planned on tonight's agenda for this. There's just information on this, and this is an information gathering. So at this time, I declare this public hearing open. And I would invite all who would like to be heard at this time to come forward. One more time. I think we might, we'll see, we'll give people online a chance if there's anyone online who would like to be heard. Oh, Mr. Lupton.
Okay. You knew that was coming.
I mean, I looked.
So I'm Al Upton, 3459 Lakeview Lane, Canandaigua. We have 2 short-term rentals in the town of Canandaigua. It's a unique situation from the standpoint that they are also partly in the city of Canandaigua. So we get some interesting situations. I do want to comment on what I perceive to be a lot of very positive movement on the part of the town of Canandaigua to try to listen and take feedback and try to adjust the code. And so I appreciate that. I think that, you know, what was originally prescribed, maybe there's some things in it that kind of don't make sense for folks who have experience with short-term rental. So I appreciate that. If it's okay, I think I want to comment on the revised code that was drafted. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, that's
to do?
fine. So let me,
Identify it.
yes, I would just want to clarify for the public. We have had, so currently there's a short-term rental law on the books. And I assume that might be why there are a number of you who are here in attendance tonight because of that. That's just a guess, a wild guess that's out there. We've been working on revising that. Mr. Nadler put together, our town attorney put together a revision. We've been working on the revision, trying to get it right. It wasn't quite ready to come forward to the board. He's been working on a re-revision with a couple other modifications that came out of our most recent ordinance committee that Mr. Lupton did attend. Those meetings are also advertised and open to the public. They're available on Zoom as well. This resolution as it sits tonight is just a draft. That's why there's no action to be taken. This public hearing tonight will be closed. We'll listen to comment. The public hearing will be closed. And then once we have listened to comment, goes to ordinance, the new law is crafted, will be taken to ordinance and then presented. There will be a new public hearing opened on that law. For new public comment and new public input pertaining to that law. So Mr. Lupton's commenting on the draft that sits in the agenda that's identified. It's the very first thing in attachment 1 that's identified as the draft. So yes, and any comments will be taken into account as we go through and discuss the other, as the ordinance committee does.
As I recall, I think it's page 16 to 21. It's not identified as a draft, but that's what I'm referencing in particular. So again, I think that's a huge improvement over what's there. I think it's much more workable for the community. And just from a matter of perspective, I mean, we have a couple short-term rentals on our street that we live with year round. We don't have an issue with those. And, you know, the owners have been, you know, very courteous and have worked with, you know, the local folks who live there to make sure that, you know, things work out well. So just my few comments would be, you've got a section there for fines for violations. Although I maybe don't agree with the amount of the fines, that's up to the town. I would again strongly encourage that if a fine is going to be issued, meaning a code enforcement officer has come out, reviewed the issue, that within 48 hours or 2 business days, you let the owner know that there's potentially a pending fine coming. And that way, they will be able to go back after the short-term renter and be able to impose that same fine on the renter and have some disposition of the issue. The other thing I would suggest is that you create an escalation path, whether it's part of the law or whether it's part of just what the code enforcement officer does. But immediately when there's a complaint, reach out to the property manager or to the owner and have those folks have an opportunity to resolve the issue. Again, we have security deposits. We have the ability to
correct an issue that might be ongoing, and it would save taxpayer monies from having anybody have to go out and respond. I would also ask that the written notifications that are inside the home be kept to safety issues and not be things like, I can't remember, some of it's like the New York State Penal Code and, you know, how many people are allowed and those types of things. Those can all be addressed in a welcome letter. They can be addressed in a contract, and you should still ask that people are required to do that. Just don't make them post signs in their home that they may be living in 50 weeks out of the year. And then, you know, I do think that the way the code enforcement officer is going to evaluate each property individually, assess what is the capacity for the property, and then hopefully also assess what's the parking capacity. I would suggest that part of the code should reflect that people are not allowed to advertise for more than either their parking capacity or their occupancy. And I think those are 2 improvements that, again, rather than getting in the middle of having a very strict code that says you have to have this number of parking spots for this number of people, I mean, you can come by plane, you can Uber, you can do different things to get to the rental without having, you know, necessarily a parking spot for every 2 people or something. I would suggest that you should have an appeals process so that, you know, and maybe that's part of the town code, that if you don't agree with the code enforcement officer, you can at least go before the planning board or whoever that might be to relook at the unique situation of each property. And then lastly, again, with the new code, the only thing that I would reference is 201-7L talks about cooking facilities in a room or a bedroom. With open floor plans, I would suggest that you could have 1,000 square foot room. Part of it's a living room, way over on the other side's a kitchen. And it's really hard to say that someone can't have a pull-out couch that they've always used as part of your normal living room. I think many people have their own open floor plans that use that. So I think it makes sense in a bedroom. Shouldn't have hot plates or whatever else. That would be a fire hazard, but I would just suggest you maybe keep that to a bedroom. I think that's what I got. So again, I would applaud the changes that I've seen and, you know, the open communication that's, I think, been very helpful.
All right, thank you, Alan.
Can I interject? I realize, yes, Mr. Lupin is speaking. The revisions that staff and I've prepared since the ordinance committee meeting
Yes.
are that any short-term rental with a maximum occupancy over 12 or 16 would also require a special use permit from the town planning board, and that no events will be allowed. That pretty much the big two. Just so you're aware that that's where we are on staff, and so that anybody else wants to comment knows that that is what's in the works.
Can I just ask a question, because I didn't understand it? So you're saying that it's different than what's in.
That's been added to what was
Added
what
back
you've
in.
seen. Yes,
So is event defined?
no, not at this point.
That will need to be defined.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Henry Rohr. I live on 3475 Lakeview Lane. I want to thank Al Lupton for his participation and interest in this topic. One of the things that I was curious about is I came this evening thinking we were going to be discussing the draft information that was on pages 16 through 21 in the agenda meeting notes. Surprised to hear that that's not going to happen this evening. I'd just like to get a general sense of what will the ongoing process be, and maybe even some potential timelines until we can actually have a substantial or substantive discussion on, if not a draft or a pure resolution, and also who's involved with this.
So the ordinance committee reviews the local law. And so the reason, the clarification about what is discussed tonight, the draft that's earlier on in the document was was seen by the ordinance committee. This draft that's here on the end, starting on page 16, is what was created during the discussion and then was what was included after the discussion at the meeting. It was included in here and it can be part of that discussion. That's what, you know, I know that Alan was referencing and kind of working on some of the changes on that as well.
Yeah.
It can be discussed and be brought up. Concerns that you have on it tonight can definitely be brought up. Issues that you might have with it. We're just not voting on it. We're just not taking a vote on it tonight.
Okay.
But it's on the table. Anything on here or any concerns that you have specific to this document are definitely on the table
Okay.
for discussion.
And the ordinance committee is having a meeting on March 4th at 10 p.m. So
10 a.m.
that 10 a.m. I'm sorry. But that will be discussed probably at length at that particular meeting.
Okay. I read the original information, then I read the draft. I saw a lot of positive changes in the draft. I'm not going to go into the details now, because it does sound like there are ways to provide additional information. Would that be done just by emails to the board? What's the best way for me to provide additional information and comments outside of this meeting for the next phase?
Emails are always a great option because it's a written record that we can refer back to.
Okay.
You're also
And-
very welcome to come on
Yeah, and
March 4th if
participation
you're
in meetings
available.
is also very welcome, right?
Okay, okay. And in terms of people on the board here and outside folks, who's actually involved with creating the new draft that I thought we we're gonna be discussing this evening? I'd just like to know who's actually involved with this.
Well, the ordinance committee is involved with our attorney, Mr. Adler's involved, Sarah's involved.
Others that the code enforcement.
Code enforcement is involved.
Right.
As part of
And
that.
then input from the community.
Citizens,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Anyone online? Are you seeing any hands?
Oh, I just want to take a break.
Okay. Have you seen any hands yet, sir?
Hi, I'm Brett Thompson. I have a property at 4969 Island View Drive. So I just want to echo some of the other stuff here. I had the previous law. And I also attended the ordinance meeting earlier this week. Oh, that maybe it was last week. But I just want to convey the same thing, that I think there's a lot of positive changes. So when I look at the other one, operating a short-term rental, there's some things that were concerning that are difficult to do. And I think that's stuff that you're trying to accomplish, to balance the needs of short-term rentals and then people that don't have short-term rentals and neighbors. I think they're important things to do. And I think you're balancing it well better in this newer version. So I wanted to give positive feedback for that too. I do think that the events probably needs to be better defined. Because that's one of the things that when I look at what an event is. And then the other thing that I do notice it's missing, that it says occupancy, but one of the things, because I also probably read maybe 30 or 40 other town codes throughout New York State. So there's a lot, and the other one had it, the difference between overnight guests and date, and the people that are just kind of like day guests. And this one doesn't say it at all, and that might be on purpose, but it's still a little hard to tell if you have an occupancy of, say, let's say you have an occupancy of 8, it's still not clear if someone can have someone over in the new code, like have 2 people over, 3 people over for dinner and then leave or come over and use a boat. So I don't know if that's intentional, if there's a reason for it, but I think that should be clearer, so.
I think even Dave's point was brought up as, that's something we definitely need to discuss. I think that was a good.
Yeah, I think a lot of the other codes will say there's still a day limit of the day guest limit. It's higher than the occupancy overnight, but there's still some limit, so it's clearer if you're staying. You wouldn't want to fine because you misunderstand that.
So the most up-to-date revision, sorry to take away from your, I don't know that you'll be interested in this, I think. Most up-to-date revisions as of this afternoon, we did it the reverse. Overnight maximum occupancy, and then other guests no more than twice maximum overnight occupancy.
Okay, I think that's.
Because, quite frankly, you want to send your guests home at dinner time or not, or have them be able to stay. And that's something that the board, the ordinance committee and the board will have to debate and decide as a policy matter, but that's what staff and I put in for their consideration.
The other thing that I also noticed when looking at a lot of the other terms is that, the overnight guests, some of the parking rules go to occupancy, but then parking can be an issue, create concerns for other neighbors. So day guests can obviously impact parking too. So you got to make sure it's clear that the parking can handle, that the parking restrictions also takes into account day guests. So those are just my feedback items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sheila Rohr. I'm at 3475 Lakeview Lane. And I just wanted to address the issue of events because I know for some people that can sound kind of wild and crazy. And I just wanted to be clear that in the last several years, we've had my mother's 90th birthday party. We've had a family reunion of 60 people. I'm one of 7 kids. So at my mother's party, we had 30 people. We've had a family reunion. My dad was one of 42 cousins. We had a family reunion of 65 people. We've had renters come in and renew their vows after 50 years of marriage with their extended families. So just to clarify, when you say events, there's all different kinds of events. And when we do have them, we do alert all of our neighbors to say, this is what's happening. Here's how many people we're expecting. Here's where we've told them they can fly. So just wanted to add that to considerations.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Anybody see any hands yet? All right.
One more comment. So. Alan, again, maybe just as a suggestion, I know I included the city's code. Since I was, needing to be up to speed on the city code as well. But the city obviously breaks different parts of the city into different designations based on density of the different areas and things like that. Again, maybe there's some areas of the lake where you have super high density, smaller lots, bigger concern. Maybe there's consideration for those types of things where an event would be more problematic in one area, let's say, than in another. So just something worth thinking about.
Okay, thanks. All right, would anybody else like to be heard at this time?
Yes, this is Dennis Page online.
Okay,
Can you hear
Mr.
me?
Page? Yep. go ahead.
Yes, I just have two things I wanted to address. One was the ordinance doesn't seem to really recognize the difference between the time you're renting and the time you're actually occupying a residence. So I'm not sure how you can define it better so that you know that the example of having family reunions, how is the enforcing officer going to know that this is a family function and not a renter that's decided to throw a big party? I'm not sure if there's a way to address that, but the code doesn't seem to have anything about that. I know I have a big family, and if I invited everybody, there would be people parking on the lawn, so just wanted to point out that I think that needs addressed. The other thing is at the end, it talks about a minimum fine of $500 and a max of $1,000 a day. I can see that for something where like somebody's throwing a wild party and you want to break it up and say, okay, you got to do something about this right away. But, some of the violations could be as simple as you forgot to put a sign up or, there's a fire extinguisher missing. Does that really make sense to fine somebody $1,000 a day until they get a fire extinguisher put up? So I just wanted to get that out there. Thanks.
Thank you. So to answer the fine point, and Mr. Nadler, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount of times we've actually fined someone is 0?
In my recollection,
pretty
at least
darn
one
close.
person voluntarily paid a fine. I think it was a dog barking issue and they had gotten rid of the dog already.
Okay,
And that was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
so,
It's a good point to address that. The town doesn't have any employees who are gonna be engaged in roving inspections, kicking doors down, taking pictures of people having friends and family over. It'll be a largely complaint-based and permit-based code, to my understanding, and based on the town's past practices. I guess people who, maybe it's a good time to just point that out to the people in the audience, that this isn't something the town has the wherewithal to go enforcing willy-nilly, and it's not a good use of the town's time or money to fine people. It doesn't add significantly to the town's budget. It's not something the town wants to do. They don't want to pay me to take it to court. They don't want to pay the code enforcement officer overtime, the state to come to court and to show up at your house in the middle of the night. It's just not something I anticipate happening. It's more to ensure compliance is why the town has fines like that in just about every chapter of the town code.
and in this case, the fines are a deterrent, like you're saying, the fines are really a deterrent. for that, and in line with the security deposits and speaking with, you know, some other short-term rental owners in line with some of the security deposits that are held. So then property owners, that is also a carrot and a stick situation with renters. If there are any issues or situations with the renters, that security deposit is then therefore held if there is ever some sort of an issue. And then as far as renting versus occupying, we did discuss this, and I know this is, it's not, it's nuanced, but it is in the code that if you are using the property that you own, you are clearly not held to the same standards as if you are, well, if you're using a property you own, but you also use that and offer it as a short-term rental, when you are using it as your own property, it is not a short-term rental, it is your own property that you are using.
Exactly.
So you don't have to worry about that and those other things. And that again, you know, that in neighborhoods where people know each other, and hopefully we have those, that's not, you know, that's not a problem with neighbors. But that has been brought up, and that's, it's nuanced, but it's there. All right. Anybody else online? Anybody else in the audience? Al, you want another shot?
No,
You good?
I'm good.
Okay, just checking. I wanted to, you know, third time's, you know, why not? All right, so at this time, any board members? Nope. Okay, if there's no objection at this time, I will declare the public hearing closed. All right, takes us to our next public hearing. To readopt a local law to amend town code, chapter 2020-31, incentive zoning. Relating to, and this is relating to attachment number 2. And at this time, I would like to declare this public hearing open. Something we said? The dinner bell's ringing.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks,
What
guys.
did he say? What did the gentleman? Vittles. I got
Vittles, time for the vittles.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the public hearing is open. Is there anyone who would like to be heard at this time?
Yes,
All right, Marion, go ahead. The floor is yours.
okay, I've got a number of concerns in regards to incentive zoning, but I'd like to just mention a couple of them right now. One is that in all of the paperwork that we have submitted to the county, to the state, and so on, about why this is being done, it says the town of Canandaigua has grown since the incentive zoning district was last updated and now includes zoning districts like SCR1 and RLD. I've lived in the town for over 25 years in the RLD. It has always been the RLD. I don't think the RLD has changed. And I have a feeling that the RLD was there before incentive zoning, although I couldn't find anywhere where I could find out when the first incentive zoning was put in place in the town. But I think RLD was there already. And I think this is disingenuous to say, well, we now have RLD and these other zoning districts like SCR1 and so on. And that's why we need to have an update on this incentive zoning to include the RLD. I think the RLD was purposely left out of incentive zoning when the first incentive zoning was done. And that really only makes sense. If you go to what the county planning board minutes said from the January 10th of this year, pages 24 and 25, they have 3 things that they would recommend, comments that they made that they want done. And I don't believe those have been done. Along with that, hang in there a second. In the New York State law that enables the town to do incentive zoning, which is 261B, I believe it is, it has a number of things that it says you must do. And one of those I sent to several of you, item C, I believe it is. And it says, each zoning district in which incentives or bonuses may be authorized shall have been found by the town board after elevating the effects of any potential incentives, evaluating the effects of any potential incentives which are possible by virtue of the provision of community amenities, to contain adequate resources, environmental quality, and public facilities, including adequate transportation, water supply, waste disposal, and fire protection. And then here comes the important sentence. Further, the town board shall, in designating such districts, determine that there will be no significant environmentally damaging consequence and that such incentives or bonuses are compatible with the development otherwise permitted. Now, in the RLD, the development otherwise permitted is single-family residential. So what they're saying is the town at some point, in order to offer incentive zoning in the RLD, has to show that any potential development would be compatible with residential single-family. I would like to know where in the town board's minutes or conversations can be seen that there has been a discussion, as the county planning board says you must have, and as is the state law says you must have, in regards to whether allowing incentive zoning in the RLD, particularly to the point that you would have a restaurant and other commercial activities, is compatible with single-family residential. What has that been done? Bottom line is, I don't think you should have incentive zoning in the RLD. That's it.
All right, thank you very much, Marion. Thank you.
Can somebody get back to me as to where there has been the discussion that's required?
I
And
think-
minutes?
I think if the board were to adopt the proposed, or I guess the discussion and decision would be in the second resolve clause of Town Board Resolution 2022-273, where it says the town board of the town of Canandaigua has reasonably concluded there would not be any substantial adverse impact on the following environmental characteristics, use of energy, public-private wastewater treatment facilities, character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources, natural resources, and so on and so forth. I think that satisfies.
Well, if somebody has
provisions of
written
the law.
it because that's required, but what I'm asking is proof that there's actually ever been that discussion. I don't think so. I think it's written up that way because that's what the state's asking for. That's what the county is asking for. So we just say, yeah, we did it. And that's it. And that's BS.
So short of going back to the minutes from that discussion, I think I can't answer that question. I don't think any of us can answer that question short of going back to those minutes. And you do raise a fair point with that.
Well, and
With that
quite frankly,
discussion.
that was a previous law that we've demonstrated to need addressing
adjustment.
and readoption, so
Mhm.
the board has, it's a good point,
And we have option to discuss
opportunity
later
do
tonight.
that.
But that is a good point.
And the county planning board is asking you also from their January 10th meeting to discuss those three items.
That is correct. All
I'd
right.
just like to hear them be discussed.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marion. All right. Anybody else like to be heard at this time regarding incentive zoning? Any board members like to be heard?
think Marion makes a good point, though, that the county planning board comments have the effect of law in terms of requiring a supermajority, so I would recommend that you ensure they don't negatively impact lake quality, consider impact to existing property owners. Those are relatively related to the use of incentive zoning, and then
But aren't those
Consider-
things that would be considered? As you consider using incentive zones, if you're in that district.
yeah, and I can say that, you know,
Well, I
those
mean,
would be
it's not-
considered. But
And
now,
also with respect to the county planning board, county planning board advanced that unanimously. They had a few comments,
with 3 comments, and I was getting to
but
the
the
third
comment,
one.
how does it work with the county planning board? If they vote no, then you have to have a supermajority. They didn't
Yes.
vote no. So it's a simple majority that would rule in a case like this.
Well, in this case, recommendation for approval with comments. Their third comment is consider intent of existing zoning districts when allowing use of incentive zoning. So consider, and then you'll be in compliance and only require a simple majority.
Yeah. Now,
If you hereby refuse to consider it, then you're gonna need 4 votes. I don't think you're gonna hereby refuse to consider that.
My understanding, the way it voted, that the supermajority, when they said no, don't do it.
Well,
They didn't say no. don't
They
do
said
it.
we recommend approval with comments. You have to consider it.
Comments are comments, they're not.
It doesn't
Well,
have any
let's-
practical impact.
Let's bring this back. It'll be on the table for a resolution. We'll have discussion on it. I'm sure this will come back up in discussion.
Let's see where it's written, that's.
So,
It doesn't have any practical impact.
so we'll bring it back up when we get back up to discussion as a resolution, okay? And then we can talk about it when we come back.
When
there.
is that, Jared?
In
Later tonight.
later tonight. Later
Okay.
tonight. If you stop interrupting, it'll be faster, but it'll be tonight. I'm just joking.
Be before 7:30.
It'll be, it's,
Second
yeah,
meetings are supposed to be an hour and a half. Right?
yes, they are.
You got 37 minutes.
Yes, we do. I knew you'd be counting. That's why I have the time on the front. All right, so board's pleasure to close the public hearing. Any objection?
No.
All right, at this time, I declare this public hearing closed. All right, a public hearing to readopt a local law to amend the town code chapter 2020-33.2 agricultural protection overlay district. At this time, I'll declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to be heard at this time? Mr. Ryan, come on up. I looked up and I saw a black cowboy hat in the back. I'm like, who is that handsome man in the back?
Most handsome one here. Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Stachak at 6285 Ketchum Road in Canandaigua, New York.
Oh, I declare the public hearing open. Did I declare it open? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
And I'm just here to support the Agricultural Protection District, and I'm glad that you're considering that. Thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Would anyone else like to be heard at this time? Any board members? Okay, without objection, I will declare this public hearing closed. At this time, public hearing to readopt the local law to amend town code chapter 220-33.1 scenic view shed overlay. At this time, I will declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would be like to be heard at this time? One more time, is there anyone else who would like to be heard at this time? Board members? Okay, without objection, I will declare this public hearing closed. All right. Okay, continued resolutions and motions. All right, resolution 2023-279, adopting the town of Canandaigua sidewalk envisionment map and report. As appendix G of the town of Canandaigua comprehensive plan update 2021 and seeker determination of non-significance.
Moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yeah. Mr. Casey.
I have concerns about this being included in the comprehensive. comprehensive plan is referred to often and is used as some of the motivation for some of the things we choose to do and not do in terms of our investment of public dollars. And I'm not certain that this sidewalk and vision map truly represents the ideals and the concerns of the public. We had 78 votes, which was touched upon earlier, and many of those votes could have been placed by the same individual. So my guess is that we probably have 1 or 2 dozen people influencing the potential future direction of the town of 11,000 people. And I don't think that having a couple dozen people is truly representative of what the town wants. I think what can be ascertained from this study is that maybe people uptown aren't concerned about the sidewalks in the southern portion of the town and vice versa. And maybe sidewalks aren't that important for our taxpayers that they want to go and invest tax dollars to accommodate it. And secondarily, I'm a little concerned that we just indiscriminately modified the results of the survey by telling people to change the priorities that were identified from the professionals that did our survey based on whims or based on what we consider to be concerns, rather than let the data play out and represent the opinions of the public. Those are my concerns.
Tom, when, I know that some of those concerns that people addressed were the algorithm that was incorporated into developing the sidewalk, envisionment map. There were certain hotspots, there were certain things that brought it to a higher priority. And that some of the staff weighed in on those priorities to say, that's really not a high priority sidewalk. Am I correct in that?
Well, the algorithm was based on certain criteria that were agreed on by the committee. Things like connectivity, safety, proximity to destinations.
Well, as an example, there was a priority, a high priority came up around the airport. And then we kind of decided is that not correct, Adeline? We looked at that and said, that's really not a high priority because it's a very different area, but some of the other things elevated that to be a place where we would consider a sidewalk.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the kind of adjustment that happened at the end of the day. And it was, they really were fairly minor adjustments. It was just, okay, the algorithm is saying this segment is a medium priority, but other information led people to say, well, maybe it should be a high priority. And that could have been things like pending developments or development trends that weren't picked up on in the algorithm. So it's important to have some flexibility with the data, just because any sort of algorithm is based on assumptions, and we like to have that qualitative local expertise at the end of the day play into it as well.
And my next question is that if we incorporate the sidewalk envisionment into our comprehensive plan, would that enable us to be more likely to get a grant somewhere downstream?
It could, yeah. If the town is advocating for that kind of accessibility and connectivity, and that shows up as a element in the comprehensive plan, it does. That can get you points in certain grant programs for sure.
No. Didn't, Tom, didn't we have someone from the county was the one that suggested putting it on the comprehensive plan? Because
I forget.
Sarah, I don't.
Was it Bill Wright?
No,
Or Tom Harvey?
The director of county planning recommended that we adopt it as part of our comprehensive plan.
they recommend that with a lot of things. I mean, a lot of our adopted planning documents could become part of the comprehensive plan. I mean, some of the ones we have are not, but he recommended that this be part of it because it's kind of an extension of the section of which comprehensive plan talks about transportation and active transportation being encouraged.
And he was part of the team as well as our school
Yeah.
superintendent was
Yeah.
part of the team.
Yeah, they were both part of the committee that followed the progress of this report and made recommendations.
John, does your objection extend to the report if it's not included as part of the comprehensive plan?
Ask me that again, please.
If the resolution said, took out the words and simultaneously amending the town of Canandaigua comprehensive plan update 2021 by adding the sidewalk map and report as appendix G. And then
I guess, Chris, my bigger concern is that we had a committee that set some criteria, and that's what I'm hearing. And based on that criteria and based on the votes, they came up with some prioritization of where we should have sidewalks or where we shouldn't, or said differently, where it's a high priority to have sidewalks and where it's a medium priority and where it's a low priority. And I think, first off, I'm concerned about the fact that we only had 78 votes. And again, that could only represent a couple dozen people. And I don't think that that's a good representation of our town of 11,000 people. And then to just add, you know, a high priority for Middle Cheshire Road from St. James Parkway to White Cliff when it was deemed to be a medium priority based on the study. And then to go and change to a low priority or remove the priority along the 5 and 20 bypass from Parish Street extension to West Avenue. And there's a half a dozen of those types of changes that were recommended by people. That it's almost like it's a manipulation of the data, in my opinion. And that concerns me.
When I was on that committee and what they were asking for, and the bypass is a good example. No one really walks on the bypass, so why would we want a sidewalk there, even though some of those criteria elevated that to a point where this is a more important place because of proximity to the hospital, proximity to physicians' offices, neighborhoods, and so forth. But a sidewalk isn't appropriate there, in my mind.
I think this is a discussion that we had the last time that we talked about
Right.
this. And that's why I made those comments that were in there, is it was a summation of the conversation that we've had on this the last two times that we brought it up. Personally, I'd like to just call for a vote on this at this point. I think we've had these discussions again and again, so.
And I think before we do that, and I totally get your concern, John, with the number of people who respond to these surveys. I've felt the same way with a comprehensive plan. Maybe 300 people, or the percentage wise, it's appalling the number of people who actually respond.
Well, I feel better, Jared, if there were 300 people that were.
I know, these guys tried.
They were everywhere.
They were
everywhere.
everywhere, trying to get as many people, as much input as they could.
And I actually saw the billboard that was requesting people participate. So my concern is that, you know, and I hate to use Middle Cheshire Road, but, you know, I will use that because we talk about it a lot. So I understand that the neighborhood probably wants sidewalks there. But yet the people that live in the uptown area, or the people who live in that area behind the Ace Hardware store, they probably don't want to go and pay for sidewalks in the southern portion of the town. And we're going to be including this in our comprehensive plan potentially. And that's a pretty influential document, and it's one we bring up a lot when we're having conversations about where we ought to invest taxpayer dollars. And I'm just concerned about how representative this document is of the true feelings of our public, of 11,000 people. And just because we didn't get the participation we wanted or had hoped for, doesn't mean that we should go and pass this bill and saying, yes, this represents what 11,000 people want in our community. That's my concern. And I know you want to rush to vote on it, and I appreciate that and I understand that, but
You know, I think we always have the ability to say no to any project, whether it's in our comprehensive plan or not. So this board will make that determination. My concern about not putting it in the.
or future boards.
Right.
But more importantly, the planning board, like Terry
But my
said, they
concern
have
is
ultimate
that,
say.
that if it is not in the comprehensive plan and we want to go for a grant and we're eliminated from that process because it's not our comprehensive plan. I mean, at first, you want to do no harm, and I think including this in our comprehensive plan goes down that path of it does no harm. At the end of the day, the town board is responsible to the taxpayers for where they're going to put sidewalks, not this sidewalk envisionment plan, and not the comprehensive plan. So someone's going to come and say, have to put these sidewalk, we want to put these sidewalks in, it's $500,000. We don't have $500,000, we're not going to put them in.
So what I'm hearing you say is the motivating factor is that we might get a grant, or there might be question on a grant application, whether this has been approved by.
Well, the county has made the recommendation that we included in our comprehensive plan. I mean, they did come to the meeting and say that you should include this in your comprehensive plan for those reasons. One of the reasons was there are a lot of grants out there for sidewalks, accessibility, all the multimodal transportation paths, that those grants exist. I would hate to be eliminated from that process because we decided that, you know, we don't want to put this in our comprehensive plan.
And obviously, me and my situation, I want sidewalks that are safe, and I want sidewalks that can be made accessible by anyone who uses them. So I support that completely. It just, I express my concern, that's all.
Okay. All right, so I think we're to the end of the discussion. We have it on the table. All in favor?
By consensus, do you all agree to change the word manager to supervisor in the last
Oh.
paragraphs?
Yeah.
Is anybody object to that?
So,
Okay,
Where is it?
Very last.
The resolution, I think, was
it
prepared
was prepared
in
last year.
October of last year.
Oh, to provide a copy to.
Okay. All right, thanks for catching that. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. All right, that carries 4. Jeez. That carries 4-1. Okay. All right, moving on to resolution 2024-53, readoption of local law number, we are gonna have to make a motion to amend the title of this. There's a typo in the title. This is not, it's not in the later part. Readoption of local law number 9 of 2022 to amend the town code chapter 2020-31 incentive zoning. We are not amending the local law. We're not amending that one. We're creating a new one. So I would like to propose a resolution to strike.
Adopt local, to revise that to say adopting local law number blank of 2024 to amend the town code chapter 220-31 and something so.
Okay, yes, that's what I meant to say.
Heather, that makes sense to you?
Don't you have to motion to put on the table first and then amend it?
That is my motion.
yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the title.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All
They can
right,
do it that way too.
all right, the title is now amended. Okay, so now can I get a motion for resolution number 2024-53 for the adoption of the local law regarding the town code chapter 2020-31 incentive zoning. I have a first.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, John. I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, we've seen an increase in our incentive zoning applications since we changed this law. I think Ms. Cassie brings up some important points. And it's important to me that we're truly considering what we're doing in re-amending this law. I'm not sure if it's been fully and properly considered, particularly with the thoughts that the county brought up. I would personally feel more comfortable if we were to invite Linda Phillips from the county to the March 4th Ordinance Committee to discuss this further with her and come back with a recommendation to the town board. Just, you know, I do have concerns that that having it over all districts could negatively impact lake quality. So I'd like to send it back to ordinance.
I agree with that. I would like to send it back to ordinance too.
Okay.
Okay, so you agree too?
Move it. So I was just saying that my okay was okay next. I haven't decided yet. That was just a filling a gap okay for now. I haven't made a decision yet.
Well, from the earlier conversation today, you wanted to exclude the RLD from this list of all zoning districts, which I don't agree with at all. I think it's all or none. It doesn't mean that there's going to be large scale development in the RLD. If you read it, it talks about a parcel. It can be a very small parcel, it could be a large parcel. But it gets the same treatment as any other large project or small project would get. It doesn't mean that it's going to be automatic. It means that it's eligible for this, rather than changing the whole area to a different zoning code, IZ. You're looking at a parcel, not the entire area. So I see no reason why we should exclude one very exclusive area and allow it to be in any other area in the town. Why are some people getting favored treatment?
Was that your motion?
No, I just like to have the
Further
ordinance
discussion.
committee review it further with the county's suggestions.
Okay.
Clear, you didn't make a motion yet, did you?
No, your comment,
We're just discussing at this point, right?
yeah, your discussion was you want the county planning board, a representative from the county planning board to come to ordinance,
Correct,
make comment, and then bring it back to the town board
yes.
with their comments included. You're not suggesting at this time any changes to the law.
No, I'm suggesting it go back to ordinance.
And my comment is, I agree with Terry. I think that each request needs to stand on its own merits, and no different than you're talking about the sidewalks, Dave, that, you know, just because we pass this and say we can look at it, doesn't mean we're gonna approve everyone that comes down the request lane. So I don't think the RLD ought to be treated any different than any other zoning area. I live in the RLD. I think that if a project comes along that is beneficial to the town, we ought to consider it, regardless of where it is. And that's what I think this incentive zoning says, is that it's got to be win-win for everybody, and we view each one on an individual basis.
It sounded to me like the county was saying to us, we had to have a discussion on this topic.
Excuse me, I want to make it very clear, I misspoke. I was flipping between two different county recommendations. There's not a supermajority. What they were recommending, and apologize for not making it clear, was to make sure when you consider individual applications to take those considerations, and I misspoke, and I apologize. I stand corrected. Terry, you were
Thank you.
absolutely right. You knew you were right.
You take that $50 and all that.
But it sounded to me like we needed to have that discussion. So I mean, what's the? I mean, what is
should still have the discussion.
I think
right? So why?
We had the discussion when we passed this.
We didn't.
We really
Were
did.
you there?
Yeah.
Were you there to listen to it?
We didn't find it, I mean, I
We
guess we
didn't
didn't
have it
find
as
it in
a
the
board.
minutes somewhere, but the county said you need to, you know. The county's.
The county never reviewed it.
We have someone that's online that says, send me the minutes, none of us can, I don't remember that, I don't remember.
I have to
that, you know.
interject, the county didn't review it because it got screwed up when it was sent. They didn't review it until just now.
No, I'm talking about the discussion here.
We never discussed the county's comments because the county never made
I'm not
comments.
talking about those. I'm talking about when we passed IZ original.
Because
Standing.
we didn't have, right, we expanded it, but we didn't have the benefit of the county comments.
Because it wasn't sent to the.
You're going right.
No, I'm
past
not.
me here. Yes, you are.
Okay, slow down and talk.
What they're saying is we need to have that discussion that they referenced. For details.
Right,
Those details, the question Marion asked is, were those details discussed here?
right.
Before this was passed in 22. Yes, it was never sent on to the county planning board for God knows what reason, but that after the fact, I'm talking before the fact, that there was reason discussion about should we pass this or should we not? Is this applicable to all zoning districts or not?
Yeah, did we
There
get,
was discussion.
yeah,
I don't think we had a large.
did we get into a deep dive about
I
the
don't
lake?
remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember talking about the lake and I just remember it being kind of added in,
I,
might as well do them all kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
like that's.
Well, set aside what I just said. Why not? Why pull out the
I would like,
RLD?
because
Why not pull out
of
the?
potential environmental
commercial,
impact.
right, I'm just wondering why the county pulled out the RLD. I don't know why that, you know, why.
I would like to hear from the county,
I
I
would
mean,
too.
I don't, is there a negative, I mean, so we can vote
I
on it
think,
in the March, one of the March meetings.
I know that that's what you wanted to do, was to pull the RLD out.
It's something I wanted to
That's what you
consider,
told me earlier this afternoon.
because it's something I think deserves discussion. I called you because I wanted
No,
to
no.
discuss it.
What you said was you wanted to take it out, period.
Okay,
That's what
well,
you said.
at this point, I'm asking for it to be discussed with the county.
Fine, let's discuss it.
so what that will require is we have a second board meeting in. We could put it on the agenda for the March 25th board meeting. But that will require a motion to March 25th.
Were you planning on having an additional ordinance committee meeting?
March 4th, I
Ordinance is on the
think.
board.
Is the next.
March 4th would be the next.
We've got a
ordinance
short-term
meeting.
rental law prior today.
Yes.
If you want it. If
Yes.
you wanted to have a meeting earlier.
Well, we were gonna discuss that at that ordinance meeting for sure, but now we're making this ordinance meeting a long one. But I think, to me, I would like to have that discussion, and I would like to have the county in to at least make a presentation. And then recommendations going forward.
Who's that? Who is it?
Linda
We
Phillips.
can either have Linda Phillips or we could have Tom Harvey or anybody from county planning department.
What about our representative in the county planning?
We could invite Mr. LeGros as well. And whoever we could have come, we could invite Jim too.
It'd be interesting to hear what our representatives say.
All right, so I would need, if you'd like to move it to the 25th, we need a motion to move it to the 25th.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move that resolution to March 25th.
So that'll be the second town board meeting. All right, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right, so this resolution 2024-53 will be moved to March 25th.
I would like to just say before we leave the topic, just to make it very clear that I do not agree with using incentive zoning to expand German Brothers Marina. I will not support that. Just so that anyone online knows that.
Just to be clear, that's in its, as it's stated, as their application has evolved at this point.
Yes,
The present proposal.
at this point in time.
Correct.
So let me follow up with a question on this topic. are we gonna invite someone or some people from the county to address our board or to address the ordinance committee?
Ordinance committee. So they'll address the ordinance committee to probably to explain their interpretation. I think, well, I'm speaking for you, so correct me, but the comment that they made, comment number 3 about determining the impact. I mean, they called out the lake, they called out the impact on to making sure they specifically
Residents, right.
called out that impact in the points to consider. I would specifically like to hear why and what their specific concerns were from the county planning board. And then they can share that with the ordinance committee, and if the ordinance committee is like, you know what, they're like, they really explained it, but it's really a case by case basis, then it goes through and we keep them all in and we move on. Then it's that case by case basis, but at least rather than reading it as a paragraph, as a 3-sentence paragraph, at least it's a discussion that can be had. And to hear their thought process and their input.
My only question was, where would we?
Yeah, I think it would be ordinance.
March 4th.
Those questions would be addressed if you're considering incentive zoning, impact on the lake, impact on the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, fine.
It's never bad to have
Yeah.
a discussion, is it?
All right, let's
You
move on.
would have the discussion as you were considering
Okay.
incentive zoning.
Let's move on to resolution twenty
What's the
twenty-four.
difference, Dave?
Resolution 2454. Readoption of local law to amend the town code, section 2020-33.2, agricultural protection overlay district.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one carries.
And you're gonna.
Aren't you glad that one was so much easier, Ryan?
Ryan only supports pop.
Ryan, and that would be, you know what, Ryan? Guess what?
You're number 1.
It's local law number 1.
That is local law. Ryan is local law number 1.
First one passes, Sheriff?
Yes,
Ryan State Memorial.
No, not memorial.
it's not memorial law.
All right, we gotta move on. 'cause
Okay.
we got time.
Resolution 2024-55, readoption of local law to amend town code chapter 2020-33.1, scenic view shed overlay.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries.
Law number 2.
Local 2.
2. Aren't you glad you're not number 2, Ryan? What? It's better to be number 1, isn't it, Ryan?
All right.
We know each other. Resolution 2024-56, surety bond acceptance for Metro subdivision, 5100 and 5150 Bristol Road.
Well,
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That one carries. Okay. Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone who would like to be heard at this time? Okay. We do have, now, I did talk to Ian and we did talk about time of when he would be presenting. I know that we do have the 7:30 stop that we had talked about. Are you okay as a board going a little bit long past that?
Yeah.
Because we have Ian here and he came all the way up here
I'll do my best, I'll pass.
to do that present. Take your time with that. So I'd like to turn the
Still
time
7
over.
minutes anyways.
I'd like to turn the time over to Ian Coyle to lead us through some of the discussion on our town manager search.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the privilege of the floor today. So just I did meet all of you before, but for those in the audience that are here that don't know me, I haven't worked with at least one of them for quite some time, but just brief background on the agenda is pre-academic partner. Pre-academic's a little bit of a play on words for practitioner and academic. I've been a practitioner of local government for 20 plus years and also have been kind of in the academic space, teaching people how to be future or present local government managers, kind of upskilling or uptraining them for a variety of places, universities across the country, Tulane, Northeastern, Villanova, University of Virginia, to name a few. So that's the name of my consulting firm. I am employed in Livingston County government up through year end. I'm a term of office holder. I have a 4-year term of office. I'm an appointed nonpartisan apolitical administrator. I also have in my employment agreement the ability under my employment contract to both teach and consult in addition to the work that I do for the county. So I just wanted to kind of level set that as far as, where I'm coming from. I have handled quite a few executive searches, mainly in New York State, but also in some places across the country, primarily for positions in public administration and primarily in positions that are considered local government managers. So a county manager, a city manager, a town manager. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about just kind of setting the tone as far as where we are right now. I guess we as a town and me as helping you as a consultant, but also talk to you a little bit about some comments that I made on the job description, and hopefully have some comments around that in order to kind of get finalization of that to get going a little bit more in earnest on the search. So what I'm hearing from previous conversations is we have a full-time position. It's the town manager. We have a town code that speaks to that from 2017 that spells out what that town manager position is. Essentially, as these positions go, it's a general operations manager. It's a kind of day-to-day affairs, management of the day-to-day affairs type position. Essentially, it's a public administration professional. So you have a town code, as you noted on my comments. I did not recommend to amend. Obviously, you certainly can go the pathway to amend. I did not recommend that because it's established. It was a process through code to get to that point in time, and I wasn't hearing anybody that was railing for that at this point in time. So now it's really a time to address anything in particular in the job description that may need some, I call it refinement. The position evolution is okay. It's certainly better to do these things when you don't have an incumbent while the time is right for consideration of these type of changes. The end goal, I would think, would be consensus on what this person will do. I guess you could say what they will not do, and then desired key traits and what will pay, salary range, something like that. So just briefly, key comments. I think you want, financial expertise, financial management experience. I know there's a budget officer nuance with respect to if they will be or will they not be the budget officer, but still there will be a responsibility component of the work around all things financial management. Certainly capital strategic planning, development know-how, personnel administration, certainly a comfort level around supervisory work, experience with government codes, intergovernmental relations, working for or with municipalities, strong in operations, strong in personal ethics, strength of character, high integrity, and a value for public service and a value of public service. And I would say helping build community. And that's just not schmaltzy. I think that's really a core component of someone that you want to be your next town manager. So the job description edits I made would amounted to 10, and they're somewhat small, and some of them are a comment to say that I'm not making a comment, as you noticed. But just to go through those briefly, and I consider these refinements kind of perfections, kind of around the edges. Comment 1 was in the job description, A to Z is listed as the town code. So my first comment was A to Z was not something I looked to make edits to because it's in the town code. Comment number 2 was a series of AA and BB, if you remember that, because A to Z is basically the town code. There was a couple additions to that. I felt, again, my recommendation was they were not really addressed specifically in the town code, and they were addressed elsewhere in the job description. There was comments around the budget process in particular. I changed that wording slightly to reflect to shall be prepared to assist, because it does already say may be appointed budget officer. So I thought the preparation nature of that shall be prepared to assist in all things budget if necessary, making sure that's clear. When we talked about, when the job description talks about things like strategic planning, I'm very careful in particular about things that I feel, my personal opinion, that are board and governance functions, and my personal opinion that are professional management functions. And things like, as you can see here, committee appointments, some things around strategic planning, I'm just very careful about the wording. So for example, around strategic planning, I said in concert with the town board, because I feel that when you talk about the composer and the conductor relationship between the town board and its manager, that the composition of a policy, visioning, mission, governance, strategic planning, where you want to go, what you want to do, kind of from the high prioritization, big picture, should be coming from the town board, myself. Under supervisory operations, I noted that I wrote the comment, administers day-to-day operations of the town and provides administrative oversight for all town board appointed positions. As I noted, I thought this rewording would be clear and clean, because it would rightfully exempt and exclude positions that are either elected official department directors or already excluded, for example, that there might be a direct appointment of the town supervisor or whatever the case may be. Comment number 6, again, I said if the committees were to the town, so for example, you talked about the ordinance committee, the finance committee, those kind of what I would consider core committees of the board, I would recommend that those be reserved for town board approval. That's just, to me, customary, that the town board perhaps a recommendation from the supervisor, approval by the town board or some process like that, as opposed to coming from the town manager. Again, that would be the preference based on that dynamic that I believe should exist. There was some a slight edit on community and customer service about the investigation of citizen inquiries and questions, and I added a line that said that that investigation should be aligned with any board established policies and procedures that are subject to the addressing of the handling of those inquiries. And then finally, just 3 more, the comments on education experience requirements. That was a little bit too, it wasn't that it was bad, it was just a little bit too, I thought, specific and too granular. And I thought in order to broaden that, if anything, it just broadens the pool of potential applicants that you're going to have. So I think that's a good thing, but it doesn't also water it down. So I suggested a bachelor's in 5 years, a master's in 4 years, plus any combination of experience, and then the preference of experiences in the work. So preferences for town, county, state code regulations, human resource management, staff relations, intergovernmental relations, public communication, financial management, and economic development and planning. Again, it doesn't exclude you from people that you might have otherwise been excluded from even seeing from an applicant or as an applicant because of, it said like 10 years working with elected officials, and someone might not have been able to really denote that, but still be a viable, good candidate. Lastly, there was one citation under knowledge, skills, and experience, which is very, it's not exhaustive, but it's quite illustrative of all the different things that the town manager would be expected to do. I did make a couple striking out of there because again, it didn't really do anything for the whole job description, and it pretty much was covered elsewhere. So those were, in summation, the edits that I suggested to the town manager job description. I will stop there for a second and ask if there's any questions or comments about that side of the effort.
So Ian, one question I had is, and you probably have a really simple answer for this. How do, and because we kind of worked with it, we have a super highly qualified director of human resources. She's amazing. She's fantastic. How do we parse out? Are there any of those responsibilities in that job description that could or should be parsed out? Or is that just an awful question to even be asking?
I don't think it's an awful question to be asking.
Because she does, she does everything related to human resources. She does personnel counseling. She does intervention. She does everything. And I see some overlap. So to make everything clear and clean, should there be any cleanup of that overlap to prevent any future any potential issue? I don't know if there will be, but just because, to make it clear, and I believe value what that employee does. I think we all do.
I didn't see anything in the town. Now, I haven't looked at her job description,
Okay.
but I only was looking at this job description. I don't see anything in here that on paper would conflict with what traditionally a position of Lindsay's nature would be asked to do.
Okay,
So I would lean toward complementary and not of conflict.
okay,
So things like implement town personnel policies. My guess is she's instrumental in, you know, making sure those are up to date and, you know, incorporating them, infusing them in the organization and, staying on top of, updates that come our way from federal and state regulations and, you know, those typical kind of, you know, functions of an HR, expert. I don't think that would conflict with the HR oriented jobs here. And then the other thing I would just say to add kind of further emphasis towards the complementary versus conflict of that, they can be complementary because they should feed off of one another
Right.
as two pros in an organization. That would be the hope.
okay.
I can't add anything to that, that's, sounded good.
You checked off everything that was on Terry's list.
Yeah.
Are you looking for a motion to approve that and sending it on your way? To get the search started?
I think that would be
Have a
helpful, if,
recommendation?
you know, subject to those edits, that if you had a, you know, a resolution of support for those edits, I mean, again, process wise, I'm not sure what your process was. I mean, we can just run with them if we could head not any consensus, but eventually you have a job description at some point in time was revised and adopted by the board right around, I believe that, you know, sometime period, so
We do have a
that would be customary.
So I think we can go with a consensus. I don't think we need to do an official resolution. When we get to that final point where that everything is going to be disseminated out, the final product, we should probably do an official, make it more official when our product is going out to the public. Before, is there anybody, we do have time for privilege of the floor. Is there anybody with any input who would like to share, who is in the room tonight? Because I know you guys probably stayed. Some of you all probably came for short-term rentals, but didn't want to leave that early. And didn't want to be rude and leave early. So you wanted to just stay till the bitter end and say you did it.
I think Karen probably came to see if we were gonna speak loudly enough.
I came for this. Yes, but I would like to ask a question. Somewhere in this
You gotta
very
get up to the
beginning,
microphone. Nobody in the.
okay, I think they can hear me.
I can't.
Can't hear you.
Somewhere in the beginning, you said there was a search committee.
Yes,
Is there a search committee?
yes,
Who's on that committee?
by resolution,
Okay, I
the-
missed it.
the town board is the hiring committee.
Okay,
And the town board plus Jim plus Lindsay is the search committee.
thank you.
Yep. Okay. So we have that. So is there consensus to move with the descriptions as outlined by Ian?
Yeah.
And, okay. Now to the sticky wicket, which will probably be, we need a salary discussion because you need to start putting some of that together.
Yeah, basically you need, next steps, you need a, you know, good finalization of a job description because you need to know who these candidates need to know what, you know, the specifics and those nuances around what the job scope would be. The second thing would be the organizational chart, you know, that.
Did you get that?
They know what they're walking into. I got a version about a week plus ago. If it's been amended or changed since then, I have not.
There is an updated one that we can get to you.
Perfect.
It is,
Presented at finance.
it was presented
Last week.
and there's consensus. It has not been passed by resolution, but there's general consensus. I don't anticipate any crazy changes to it. There have been minor adjustments, basically with the positioning of elected officials and their secondary appointments, like registrar and things like that, tax collector, and just things that are written in code but needed to be adjusted on the org chart.
So Lindsay has that.
And Lindsay has that, and I might be able to send that to you right now while we're just sitting here.
Okay, and then obviously, you know, the salary, so the benefits are basically, you know, usually customary benefits of a municipal jurisdiction. But the salary is a range that we need to place out. And that's a town board driven decision, so.
So our prior town boards, our prior town manager salary was 141,000 plus a vehicle, correct? That's correct. Yeah.
Well, there's a period of time that he took the vehicle home.
I mean, that wasn't in the contract. was it?
It was,
That's my recollection. I really don't think so. There was also, in the contract with you, there, this stuff was a matter of public record, so some people. There's training, I don't know
Yeah.
the specific amount,
Yep,
but it said we'll send you to
yep.
just about any training you want.
so there were
But that
several
was
thousand,
After a while.
several $1,000s of other benefits.
Yeah, memberships and various.
Yeah,
So,
ICMA and things of that.
Right.
I think it makes sense for you to send your.
Mhm.
I mean,
Of course, training's important.
the training part is important, but I feel because we have so a couple things. I mean, I think as we go through and what you've created in there, and as we hone in on this, we really, and as we look at people, you know, I really hope we can look at people with a finance strength that is their number one strength. Because there is so much that I know we talk about planning and development and comprehensive planning and project review and long-term planning. There are so many resources available to us for the county that we have not tapped into, that the county can provide to us if we ask them and if we network with them and we reach out, that we have access to the teams at the county.
Like what? What?
Comprehensive plan review, code review, project review. From the onset to, you know, they see the projects at the end, they'd like to see some of the projects at the, you know, they will look at the projects at the beginning and see if there are any red flags or issues. They will offer, those services are available as well. So that is available to be tapped into.
Is that primarily development type issues or? I mean,
Planning and development.
Okay.
Planning and development, basically. You just threw me off my train
Sorry.
of thought. So, yeah, no, I lost it. Where was I going?
County.
You were commenting about the planning and development.
So, yeah,
capabilities of the county, I believe.
We have that. So working on that, working on the finance. Hopefully we really hone in on somebody with that financial skill and that financial benefit. And then we can fill in some of those other gaps that we have with the county level. You know, Sarah's doing amazing, you know, where she is, and, you know, the knowledge that she's gained in the last little bit is, you know, is unbelievable. Also, the fact that we are different, you know, structure wise than when the position was originally created. It was created to fill a void of other leadership. You know, you had people that didn't want to be here, people who left, positions that weren't there. Now we have an amazing, you know, we have an amazing HR person, we have amazing finance people. So I don't think we're at that same level. So that's why I think for the salary, I feel very strongly that we should be at that lower level to get somebody, you know, who's learning. They don't have to be a master of everything. So I'm proposing that 95 to 110 range. Somebody who's maybe starting out, somebody who might have that planning experience, wanting to have the chance to have this next position, but where you have other resources available to use while you're here, other professionals to tap into while you are here, who doesn't have to feel like they have to try to do the whole thing. You know, and learn and, you know, and step through that. Somebody young and energetic who's ready to take the bull by the horns and go for it and use this as an opportunity to learn and grow too. I think that's okay. So that's where I am with that.
Ian, what do you think about that number?
Well, as I stated, I think you basically have,
What was that number? I missed it.
you said 95 to 110.
95 to 110.
Get what you pay for.
I think you have basically two ranges to be fully transparent. I think you've got a range that's about 1 to 110. So I guess you could say maybe that's within that range. I think you got another range that's about 120 to 140, which is where the previous gentleman was. And I think, you know, you're going to get a candidate pool that looks a certain way. I know it's only $20-some-odd thousand difference, but I think you're going to get a candidate pool that looks a little different Probably more, a little bit more experience, a little bit more credentialed on the larger end, but not necessarily. Versus the lower end, but it's not to suggest that you're not gonna get quality candidates at either end. It's, again, I don't wanna sound like I'm usually in the business of making decisions, right? So it's like, I don't wanna sound like a fence sitter or a buck, passing the buck. And that's why I basically said you got, I think, two distinct ranges to choose from, choose one, and we'll proceed accordingly.
Is there a negative to choosing the lower one? And if we don't get appropriate candidates, bumping it up?
No, I mean, that has been done, it has been done where you have a, you have almost a swing and a miss, if you will.
Right.
You have, or what they call, search reopened, or still looking for other candidates, or search extended, various terms that you see. It certainly has been done before, and usually it comes with some sort of notation that says, salary adjusted, salary range extended, something like that, and that has happened before.
I go with the 120 to 140 myself. I think you get what you pay for. I think you get somebody that's right out of school or something like that, that doesn't have a number of years, perhaps, of practical experience. I don't think that we should be a training ground for that person. I'd rather have somebody that can hit the ground running and do the job that we want done, rather than learning on the job.
What's the negative of doing 100 through 140 so that both potential pools could be considered?
I wouldn't say that there's a major negative to it. It's just a very high range. Well, extended range, you know what I mean? So you would rarely see a range that has that much of a gap between the starting and the end, in my experience. You frankly see those type of ranges when they go more egregious than that, when you're in a place that has to be posting a range by some public transparency laws like New York City nowadays. You see ranges like 100,000 to 220,000. And I don't mean to make light of it, but usually that's where you see those examples. 40 is not crazily different, as far as the range goes, but they tend to be a little bit more tighter, just quite frankly, they tend to be a little tighter.
I just,
I'd
be interested to see
I answered
what's
your first
out
question by saying there's not a major negative in doing it that way either.
With like little pay, pay based on.
Yeah,
Commensurate with experience, dependent qualifications, obviously. I mean, the biggest thing nowadays in 2024, and I'm hopefully it's pretty sure the choir, talking choir, is that a range is essential.
Oh, yeah.
Being very clear about what you're paying, being very clear about what the expectations are, being very clear about the job description, things like that. That's why we're covering all these bases now. So there's no ambiguity, and it's very as clear as you can possibly make it.
Do you guys have 140,000 to pay the town manager?
It's in the budget for this year for 141.
You spend some of that?
We transferred some out. We paid Doug about a $24,000 buyout for this vacation money.
But he won't be paid between now and whenever this new person comes in.
Yeah, I think
There's a range of 100 to 140.
Yeah, I'm not going up that high.
Well, let's vote it. How do we figure this out then? Because I'm not going along.
John hasn't had an opportunity to speak. So. I don't know if you have anything you want to say.
I think we are a pretty sophisticated town with pretty sophisticated operations. And we had a very qualified town manager before. And I think if we want to try to find someone that comes close to achieving the same level of responsibility and the same level of management that was provided by our previous town manager, I think we're going to end up being towards that higher end of things. And I don't think we ought to shortchange our taxpayers by finding somebody that, as Terry put it, needs a lot of on-the-job training. I think we need to find someone that can fill those shoes right up front. And I recommend that we narrow that range and we try to find somebody in the 120 to 140 range. Otherwise, we are, I think, going to gonna find a pretty inexperienced person. It's something less than that. I know that in the construction industry, we're finding project managers that are making $120,000 a year. And I'm sure that there are other comparables in other industries that are making the equivalent. So I think to find an experienced person, we're gonna be in that range.
So you don't think 95 would be appropriate for an executive level person?
No, I think that a $95,000 pay range is not an executive level person. I think that's more of a mid-level, maybe. You're gonna get kids out of college now that are being offered in the $65,000 to $80,000 range. So I don't think you're gonna find somebody that is gonna meet our expectations of that $95,000 range.
You put a X number of years of experience next to degree requirements. 3 or 4 years out, it's gonna be up there. It's not gonna be 95,000. I think our HR manager is close to that anyway. And I don't think you wanna have a situation like that where you got this kind of relationship reporting wise, that you got parity in terms of pay. That's not good.
So you don't have to decide what to pay this person today. You have to decide.
You have to decide.
Range,
That's
that's right, yeah.
Correct.
Dave?
I could live with the 100 to 140. I would like to see what's at both ends, you know, I mean, it'd be interesting to see that. We don't have to hire anybody, we just wanna look at them and see what the interest is.
Right.
Where are you guys?
120 to 140.
You're 120 to 140?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, I'm not fixed on that, but I think that that's the range or area that we're gonna be in. I mean,
Are you okay with 100?
What about 100 to 120? That,
did I hear you say 110 to 140?
No, I said 100 to 140. I know it's a big range, but
That's a big range, and I think, it's tough when you go back out to the marketplace with revised numbers. Because, you've got a lot of qualified candidates that are probably looking for it the first time, and then they're gonna say, well, geez,
but in my mind, they're the 140s. That's why you put a range in.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, we're not eliminating someone. If someone says, hey, I've got to make 130, that's in the range.
Yeah.
I just would like to see what's in the 100 range, just.
mhm.
I mean, we might not hire it.
What if somebody knocks their socks off, who's got a couple years experience, but checks all the boxes and they're amazing, and young kids can do things? I know, we like to think only experienced seasoned people can do things, but there are young kids who can do things.
You're gonna say all the.
No, I was not. No, I was not, but you'd be surprised the energy they come out with and the
Right,
experience they come out with.
So you don't pay them 140, you pay them at the lower end. But
Yeah.
You got a range there that, does ICMA have data that shows any kind of relationship between years of experience and income levels, salary levels? I'm sure they do.
Yes, yeah, and more,
Every industry does.
yeah, it's more so based on, the only problem with it hasn't been updated in a couple of years, and there's been a big shakeup in the industry, but it's more so based on population. That's the.
Let me ask you, Ian, you're the professional, you're the person we brought in. And for someone to fill that job description that you helped us with, where do you think we're gonna be attracting the best candidates? What range?
Well, it goes without, I don't mean this to be patronizing, a higher range will attract a better candidate. I think everybody knows that, but that's why I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but certainly a higher range will likely, because what you'll do is if you had somebody that was, again, I apologize, but it goes without saying, but if you had somebody that's in a mid-tier of that range, but would come for a higher number, they're going to not look toward the position because that range has not been posted at that higher number. But that doesn't mean to be, saying that you're not gonna get anybody at a 115 number. You might. You might get some really high quality candidates at that, because, and I said before, I think the repute of the town, the sophistication of the town is a big draw. The name of the town, the location, the quality of life, the options, the community. The park, I mean, that's a draw for people across a lot of different experience ranges.
The Pomeroy Award.
So-
Put that right in
I'm
there.
getting to that, I'm trying to maximize my minutes and cut off.
So Ian, what's,
Everybody's got a Pomeroy.
what's the difference between a town manager and a town administrator?
Usually a town manager is, so it's usually, the word manager administrator are usually based on discretionary autonomy or authority to hire and fire at will. So for example, in the county world, the county manager usually has the ability to hire or fire at will, whereas a county administrator makes recommendations to do those things. Likewise, a village, city, town manager usually has that ability, although around here, that doesn't necessarily be the case, so. You know, the village manager in Brockport and the village manager in Fairport, I don't believe have those automatic authorities, but like the New Rochelle city manager does. And appointment setting, as I mentioned, when I went to appointment setting, as something to edit, because, well, you have a town manager job as the town code, and that's the title of it. The form of government in this town did not change in 2017. The actual form of government didn't really change. You created a very much, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, am I wrong on that?
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely
Yeah,
100%.
so the point I'm making is that it's really just nomenclature at that point in time, because managers usually have a couple set of core responsibilities. Their chief executive officer. Administrator usually is a chief administrative officer. I know that sounds like what's right. And so here in this government, even when Doug was here in 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the chief executive officer position remained and supervisor.
I don't know that the town actually has a chief executive officer, but.
Okay, but
Your point is
in
well
practice-
made. Your
in
point is
practice,
absolutely
yeah.
correct.
So usually it's what amounts to kind of some nuanced differences between core responsibilities. And frankly, the fact that the town manager here never had those. It makes it be that it's a town manager, but in a form of government, it's not really a town manager form of government.
So we are, but we aren't.
Yeah, I think it's just fine.
We're like a unicorn or a Pegasus or
No, I mean, you know, there's quite a few like you. I think when you get to the town, as you know, there's very few positions of a chief administrative officer nature.
is there any benefit to having an administrator versus that and going through that change? And
I think if you were creating it,
It's already what's there is an administrator.
right,
I think if you were creating it from scratch, Supervisor, I think that I would look to noodle that a little bit further.
right.
But at the end, I don't know if it gains and gets you what you might, because as long as you're not changing the core responsibilities, I mean, you're kind of around the peripheral, around the edges here.
Yeah,
The core thing is this board appears to want a chief administrative officer position, a general operations director, someone with finance experience, whether you call it a manager, an administrative officer, or an administrator. It's all kind of funneling down to what still amounts to be your town code and your job description.
where were you in 2017?
I was Wilson County.
Sounds like he's available after the end of the year.
Where are you?
First of the year,
January 1st, what are you doing?
Yeah, no.
We'll offer you
Let's go
85.
let's go fishing with Jack.
We'll offer you 85,000 a year.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Plus a cabin,
No.
plus a cabin.
But it's not right.
No.
No, he's
So-
living it. How long are you?
You told me, as long as I get the short-term rentals out of what you pass out.
All right, so, all right, we
stalled out at
at,
a difference of about $10,000, guys. Your consultant, your expert has said it doesn't really matter if you go 100 to 140.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt you.
Correct me if I'm.
No, sorry to interrupt
I
you.
thought
Actually,
that-
that was your initial question, and I answered it by saying that, you know, it is a higher than you would normally see range, but it's not an inappropriate number to place out. And I think that's what you were saying is.
Right. I get LinkedIn emails for general counsel and associate general counsel positions that have 50 is the standard range, some are 40, some are 60, a
So-
little higher than this, but
Are you guys comfortable with that range? So we've come up a little. We're
140.
100 to 140, so that comes up from my bottom and it sticks where you guys are. Are you okay with that? John, you comfortable? Consensus? Adeline?
Yes.
Dave? You have consensus, 100 to 140.
Let it be known that everybody agrees.
Okay, so that's the last two you have consensus. You might just want to leave right now.
Can you send me the organizational chart?
I'll send you the
I
organizational
will
chart.
Make those edits on the job description.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Ian. Thanks for sticking around. All right, it is 8 o'clock. We do not have any other business at this time. We don't have an executive session. Thanks, guys. You had to bring security with you too, seriously? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is